Dave Anderson. I'm originally from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and this is my first appearance at the Comedy Store in beautiful West Hollywood. West Hollywood is a beautiful city. I've lived in it for the last 27 years. And I've lived in the same apartment for the last 25 years. There's two reasons for that. First of all, we have rent control. Second of all, I hate to move. The next move I participate in will involve a gurney and the coroner. So I just recently got cable, and I started watching this show. It's the messiest house in the country. And I get so lost in that show. No, really, I can't tell where the TV ends and my apartment begins. And I have a friend who suggested I get into feng shui. I don't know if you're familiar with feng shui. You know, it's the movement of energy with mirrors and, you know, negative spaces. Let me tell you, there is not a big enough mirror to move the energy in that apartment. He tells me it's all about energy and balance. Let me tell you, the only energy expended in that apartment is me trying to balance as I try to step over 27 years of accumulated crap to get from the bedroom to the kitchen and back. So my friend, his name is Ricardo, and he's Asian. And which is, you know, that's fine. He ended up settling with his family in the early 70s in the area between East LA and Alhambra. And, you know, I get really embarrassed introducing him to people. Not for myself, I don't get embarrassed myself, I get embarrassed for the person I'm introducing him to. Because the other day we were shopping, and we ran into a friend of mine from work. And I get embarrassed introducing him to Latino people because, you know, this guy Jose from my work, I'm constantly ribbing him and teasing him. And I said, "Hey, Jose," I said, "how you doing?" He goes, "What's up?" Because that's how he talks. And I said, "This is my friend Ricardo," and he goes, "Ricardo?" He goes, "Oh, shut up." He goes, "You are so stupid." And I'm like, dude, I go, "That's his name." And he goes, "Okay, I'll see you later, bye." So anyway, I mentioned I'm originally from Minnesota. And I pretty much had a real idyllic, you know, upbringing in Minnesota. And I always equated it with the Brady Bunch. I said, you know, it was kind of a Brady Bunch upbringing. It was really great. And as I got older, I realized, you know, the Brady Bunch, they were kind of a goofy lot, you know, kind of crazy. They did a lot of goofy scandal. And my favorite character on that show was Alice. You know, and Alice was kind of an enigma, you know. She always had that little love interest, Sam the Butcher and everything. And, you know, after watching it, you know, for a number of years, I think most Americans could tell, you know, through the subtext and her behavior that, you know, Alice was a housekeeper. So, anyway, speaking of Minnesota, I wanted to let you know that, you know, Minnesotans are very touchy about their food. At any given moment, most Minnesotans are touching some form of food. And the thing about food in Minnesota is you never want to accept food on the first offering. You always wait till like the second or third, usually the third offering. You know, even in a restaurant, if the waitress comes over, you're like, "No, we're not ready yet." And so they come back, and a good waitress will take her pencil off of her, you know, she'll show you the pad, and you'll be like, "No," you wave her off. She comes back the third time, and, "Okay, I think we're ready to order now." So it's okay, it's food etiquette, you don't need to worry. And the other thing you have to be aware of in Minnesota is food euphemisms. A lot of times I'll say, "Would you like a little lunch?" You know, I think I need to clarify what a little lunch entails. A little lunch usually consists of carved meat from a carcass of a domesticated farm animal on wheat toast with mayo, lettuce, tomato, onion, cheese, pickle spear, potato chips, potato salad, macaroni salad, fruit salad, usually made with Cool Whip, fruit cocktail, and miniature marshmallows with sugared coconut sprinkled to taste. And you have to, when you're there, you can't eat too quickly, because if you eat too quickly, you'll get seconds. You know, and I don't know if you're familiar, have you ever seen those big, huge forks and spoons that are carved out of wood? I don't know if they're from the Philippines or wherever. My aunt had those on the wall. I know when I was growing up, I always thought they were decorative until one day she snatched them off the wall to toss a vat of salad for us all, you know? We got done eating, she washed them all up, dried them off, and hung them back on the wall. I was like, who knew? So anyway, recently I went to the doctor because I'm concerned with my health and all that. So I went to the doctor and I said, I needed to get the regular tests. He took all the tests and everything. He says, okay, well, he says, your good cholesterol's too low, your bad cholesterol's too high. And he says, most of your other tests came out in a, reasonable range. He says, except your heart test. He said, you came out with a 29. And I said, oh, is that good? And he said, no. He says, most people score between a -3 and 1. I said, well, what does 29 mean? And he says, it means you're at a 29 times increased risk of dropping dead of a heart attack. He goes, but I wouldn't worry about that at your age. He says, I need to put you on some statins. And I said, no, I don't want to go on statins. I said, let's try diet, exercise, and supplements. And he says, okay, fine. So I go to the store and I buy all the supplements. I get my niacin, calcium, magnesium, zinc. And he says, I want you to get odor-free fish oil. Omega-3 fish oil capsules. So I'm thinking, okay, fine. So I go to the store, I'm looking at all the prices of all this stuff, and I'm thinking, you know what, odor-free? I go, my God, it's like 3 times as expensive as the other stuff. I said, I'll just get this, no one will know. So I'm sitting there, I'm driving around with my friend Ricardo. This is like late March, early April, I'm driving around. I said, hey, Ricardo, I go, do you smell fish? And he goes, dude, I'm Asian. He goes, we usually have, seafood or fish almost every night. He goes, I think I'm probably the wrong person to ask. And he goes, by the way, he goes, anyway, he goes, it's Friday. And I said, yeah. I go, what's your point? And he goes, well, and we're in Lent. I said, oh. I said, well, maybe we drove by somebody's house that was cooking fish or something. So I just didn't think anything of it. I said, good point. So I went back to the doctor, and I said, yeah, I'm back. He says, how you doing? And I said, oh, I feel fine. He says, so you've been taking all the supplements and everything? And I told you? I said, oh, yeah, niacin, calcium, magnesium, zinc. And he goes, but you haven't been taking that odor-free fish oil, have you? And I said, well, no. I said, how can you tell? He goes, I could tell the minute you walked in here. And I said, how could you tell? And he says, well, he goes, I don't mean to be alarmist. And he goes, no, I don't mean to be rude. He goes, but you smell like carp. Thank you very much, everybody.